Hello, if anybody is here, welcome to the pre-show, which is where I just go live, get everything tested, get everything ready to make sure that we're ready to rock and roll with everything. The pre-show starts at 10 before the hour. But if you are here, I'd love it if you would, in the comments, chat box, whatever, say hello. Give me your name and where you're from, because I always love to know where everyone's from. And then forgive me looking away a little bit here. I've got all my things here to make sure that everything is streaming where it is meant to stream, and everything is cool. And so far, it's looking good. There's even been some bugs with Facebook, and I've had to do some things manually to get the stream going, but that seems to be working fine this morning too. So again, if you do happen to be here already, I'd love it if you'd say hello in the chat box or the comments box. Just give me your name and where you're from, and or anything else you might like to share just in a casual way as part of the pre-show. So bear with me a few more minutes. I will start looking to see if anybody has said hello. Hello, Mara Rose from Dublin. Glad to have you with me again here. Time difference makes me sign early in case I make a mistake. I totally understand. What is it, 5 hours from U.S. Eastern Time to where you are? I think that may be what it is for England and other parts of Europe, but I'm not sure. So welcome. Let's see. Lisa, hello from New Jersey near Atlantic City. Welcome, Lisa. Jay, I'm just going to say Jay. I leave out last names just for, well, I guess it doesn't matter because people can see it. So Jay Winger, hello from Ohio. Dimitri from the Ukraine. Welcome, Dimitri. Thrilled to have you here joining me. This has been so much fun for me. As you probably know, this is episode 6. And it's really been fun. And it was a long time coming. It took me a long time to get everything in place and be prepared to make the commitment and know that I would be around to be here for a whole lot of weeks in a row before traveling or whatever. So let me see here. All right, and Facebook just came online. If you happen to be joining me on Facebook, let's see, where are we on time? I'd love it if you'd say hello. Let me know your name and where in the world you're from. That would be great. And anything else that you'd like to share? Let's see. Hello, Kathy from California. Frank from Switzerland. Hello to both of you on the website. And I see just guest here. It's 10 to 8 in the morning on the North Shore in British Columbia. Welcome. Guest 6941. Again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. The internet is just such a blessing because it lets people like us from all over the world, no matter where you are, be able to connect. And that's just so awesome in so many ways and for so many reasons. And I just love seeing that these kinds of things are global. Okay, Ole from Denmark, ready as always. Or Ole, again, I'm sorry about anybody's name that I mispronounce. I do my best, but it's very hard. Let me see. Okay, so welcome everyone from Facebook. Welcome everyone from YouTube. AC Bailey from Tacoma. Been reading the Ultimate Happiness book. Cool. You know, it's funny, I've said this somewhere. You may have seen it, you may not have seen it. By far, my most powerful and impactful book was Busting Loose from the Money Game in English and in every language that it's been in. But my bias, and I don't put things on a hierarchy, but just what appears in my mind, so to speak, is that what's in that Ultimate Key to Happiness book is one of the biggest gifts that I can give people and give humanity. I just think it's such an important book. And so anyway, I'm thrilled that you're reading it. What's in there is just pure magic that can change lives. And it's a thin little book. It's a quick read. But it's a major gift that I received, what's in there, and that I gave the world in that thin little book. So cool. Let's see. Sorry, I forgot to say my name. Lynn, love your show. Thank you. Let's see, what time is it? I got to remember to hit a button here that starts the timer for the pre-show that starts at 10 of, and I've forgotten a few times. There's so many moving pieces here to do all of this the way that I want to do it, and each week, I think I said this last week, each week I get a little bit better. I figure things out, I get things a little more smoothly, I work out bugs, whatever, and so that's been fun too. That's the way things always are with me. They launch however they launch, and then stuff happens and they get tweaked and refined and whatever, and then it pretty much locks into something that then repeats, whether that's a live event or it's a show like this or whatever. Lisa, I've listened to both books and they are incredible. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. As you may or may not know, or you may or may not understand, I do not take any personal credit for any of those books. I may have been the scribe that it poured through. These hands may have been what typed them, but I have always been aware, not just intellectually, but in actually experiencing what it's like to write a book, that it wasn't me, and that was just coming from somewhere else. And all of it benefited me as much as it benefits other people. And so I appreciate the compliment. And that's my truth anyway, that I'm really not the one that wrote the books. If you're aware of the, well, you're aware of those. If you're aware of some of the stuff in the Ultimate Freedom Experience, I go into more depth on that. You know, who is it that's really doing all of this? And we've talked a little bit about it. We'll talk about it in some future episodes of the show, but I appreciate the comments. Hello, Robert and all. Lily from Ukraine. All right, so we're almost ready to start the pre-show. See if anyone else has. There we go. All right. Fancy, huh? I saw this timer that you're looking at, looking like a little watch. I saw that on somebody else's live show, and I really liked it, so I found a way to get it done for myself. So let's see. Anybody else who has just come on, I'd love it if you'd say hello and tell me your name and where you're from and anything else that you might want to share. We are now officially in what I call the pre-show, which is 10 minutes before the show actually starts, and it's just an opportunity to connect in a casual way. I'm not really playing the role of teacher, coach, writer, speaker, whatever here, just Robert, and we're just kind of connecting in a social way. Other stuff comes into it, obviously, but and then the show starts officially at 11 my time, whatever that might be your time. Penny. Hi, it's Penny from Overland Park, Kansas. Looking forward to a new episode. Well, so am I. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Years ago, I think it was in my 20s, I worked for a company that franchised computer stores. And very often what we did is we would locate an independent computer store business in a market, and then they would join our franchise and they would get lots of benefits. And I know that we had at least one franchise way back when in Overland Park, Kansas, because I recognize that name, and I recognize the name as having come from that part of my history. So cool. Marion. Hello, Marion here from Oklahoma City. Cool. Welcome, Marion. I'm thrilled that you're here. May J. Sorry if I said that wrong. I'm from Nashville. Welcome. As I keep saying this, and so whatever, I keep saying it, it's true. I'm thrilled that you're all here. I'm thrilled to be doing this. You can see the timer on your screen. That is when the show will actually start, when that timer hits 0. Again, this is the pre-show. It's just an opportunity for us to connect socially before the official show. Ralph from, sorry about the pronouncing, Shebai something, Germany. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. Yeah, Maura Rose says 5 hours. Are you 5 hours ahead in Germany too, or is there a time difference beyond that? I'd be curious, Ralph. Let's see. Oh, forgot to minimize this. That's the software that actually runs the show, if you're curious. I'm a Mac guy, and most of what I do in my day-to-day life is on a Mac. But what I discovered is to do these live streaming shows and to be able to do it the way I would want to do it with the reliability and the stability and the features, I have to do it from a PC. So I have a PC back there. That's what that screen's for. That's just for this live streaming show. And I may have mentioned this before, the scene that you can see there on the screen, that's a very important scene at the end of a movie called Contact with Jodie Foster, which, by the way, is a great story. If you haven't seen that movie, it's many, many, many years ago. It's an older movie, but it's a great story. And that scene was very inspiring to me, and so I found a big, HD, gigantic, clear image, and I have it as the desktop for all my computers. All right, let's see if anyone else. Lovely Chen. I'm from Taiwan, but I'm watching TV now. Cool, welcome, Lovely. I'm thrilled that you're here. As you probably know, I have been to China now, I think 5, 6 times. I have not yet gotten to Taiwan, but it is on my list and it is on my plan in a future trip. It'll probably be next year to visit Taiwan because I very much want to. All right, where are we? 5 minutes. Anybody else that's here already early and I'd love it if you'd say hello. Give me your name and where you're from in the world and anything else that you'd like to share. Cool. Well, it's a very overcast day here today. I live in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a small town in the center of Virginia, if you don't know, on the east coast of the United States. We've had a lot of rain lately, which has been great. We need it. And this is my office over the garage at my home. And outside that way, there were these plants. And after about, 17, 18 years, they started to get old and they caught some disease and they started to die. And so about a month ago, I had them pulled out and I had grass planted. And so I really want the water. I have sprinklers on them, but it's been really a cool thing. And it's also kind of metaphorical to see that they cleared this area from something that was old and sick and dying. And they cleared that out and then they prepared the soil. And then they put in grass seed, but it just looks like, and then they put straw on top. And so there's nothing there. And then you water it and you take care of it and there's still nothing there. And then a little bit of grass starts to come up, but there still isn't much. And then a little more and a little more and a little more. And it's starting to fill in right now and it's very cool. So anyway, that's been interesting and metaphorical. And it's also why I like it when we get the extra rain here. Let me see if there's anybody new. Cindy. Hi, I'm from British Columbia. Welcome. Dara is here from the bottom of the atmosphere, a.k.a. Oklahoma. I'm not quite sure what that means. Do you want to explain that? You don't have to, but I'm curious what bottom of the atmosphere means. There must be some significance there that I'm missing. But welcome. Looks like that's all that I'm seeing. If there's anyone else that has joined us, oh, here we go. Julie is here from California. Hello again, Julie. I remember you were with us last week, I think, maybe before, but I remember last week, as I do a lot of you that are here. Alan, good morning from Houston, Texas. I can't remember if I told you, Alan, I probably did. I lived in Houston briefly, about 6 months in my 20s, and then I ultimately moved to Dallas. But it was a time when the Houston oil business was really struggling, and it was a difficult time for Houston, and stores and things were boarded up, and it was tough for people with jobs and stuff. But I was only there 6 months, and then I lived in Dallas for 4 years. But and I'm not sure I've been back to Houston since I moved. Joy, good, beautiful morning from the Bay. Cool. Welcome. We need the rain here in the Bay. Cool. I understand. Welcome. Let me take a look. I got one computer here that's showing my website, and then I've got a computer here that's showing Facebook and YouTube, and so that's why I have to look to see what's going on. Jim from Rochester, New York. Welcome, Jim. I'm thrilled to have you here. As everybody, whether you have said hello or not. Megan Ellis, love the seeds being planted. Smiles. Welcome again, Megan. Thrilled to have you here too. It's interesting looking at these little Facebook images. It looks like Lovely Chen. I can't tell. It looks like that might be a cartoon version of herself, which I have one too that I use in my emails. That's kind of fun. And then the different pictures, most of them are too small for me to really be able to see. All right, we got about 1 minute until the live show. So as soon as that happens, I'll play my intro, and then we'll go into the official part of the show, which will happen when you see the countdown that you can see hitting 0. Anybody else? Let's see. Maura Rose, it would be nice if we could send you some of ours in exchange for some more sunshine from Ireland. Yeah, that maybe that'll get created someday, a way to be able to transfer stuff like that. That would be cool. Let me see. Nancy, good morning from Fort Myers, Florida. Hello, Nancy. It looks like that's everybody, and we're only a few seconds away now, so if you still want to say hello, I'll see it later, but I don't look at these again unless something unusual happens until we get to the Q&A section. So welcome again to everybody. I'll see you, well, we got a couple more seconds, but soon I'm going to have to cut over and we will officially start the show. Let's see, one last look. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Freedom Teachings video series. Welcome to the Brutally Honest Tuesdays show, a place that you can come every week to say goodbye to hype, dead ends, and frustration, and hello to the truth that sets you free. I'm Robert Scheinfeld, and I will be your host. In case you don't know, I'm a New York Times best-selling author, a speaker, a coach, an entrepreneur, and a major renegade, thus the title of this show. I'm also the creator of the Ultimate Freedom Experience, my life's work. The purpose of this show every week is to drop major drops in the pond of your life, your consciousness, your awareness that can ripple out and affect you long after each episode ends. And the purpose is also to push hard and aggressively on lies, illusions, and stories so that you can discover and experience the truth with capital T's that's out there waiting for you. All right, welcome to episode 6 of Brutally Honest Tuesdays. I'm thrilled that you joined me here, whether you're joining me live or you're joining me by recording, watching a replay later. As I've mentioned before, and I will mention again, I'm sure, this is something that I was looking forward to doing for a really long time. And it's been so much fun for me, the first 5 episodes, and I look forward to it every Tuesday morning as I start to get ready for it. And so I'm thrilled that you're here. The topic for today is what I call the magic genie effect, and a decision that you absolutely must make if you want to continue a journey into truth with a capital T, experience true transformation, whatever words you want to use for the kind of thing that we're all here focusing on. So we'll get to that in a minute. I like to start out with just a couple of logistical, informational kinds of things. So the first thing I want to let you know is if you get interrupted, you miss some of the show, this is where to go. My website, robertscheinfeld.com/BHT, which is short for Brutally Honest Tuesdays, to make it easy for you to remember. That's where you can get access to replays, make up what you missed. You can also subscribe to the Brutally Honest Tuesdays email list there, which I'd like to. And I'd like you to, because it's a good way for me to be able to communicate with you in different ways. And so that's something to keep in mind. And if you enjoy this show, again, if you're watching it on video, you're watching it live, I would appreciate it if you would comment so I know what you're thinking, how it's impacting you. If you would share this, invite other people to join the show that you think might be interested in it. Like it, comment, share if it's something that you enjoy. I would appreciate that. It helps me. It helps other people, and it can be fun for you. So it can be a gigantic, I guess we'll call it a triple win. All right, now here is my quote of the week. And this one is not like some of the other ones that is about the topic today. It's just, I was watching a movie 2 weeks ago, and it was about when Bjorn Borg, as a professional tennis player, and John McEnroe had their rivalry in tennis, and it was about a particular period of time with them. It was this amazing movie, and at the end of it, there was this quote that I just thought, oh my God, that's amazing, and I've never thought about anything like that before in my entire life. So here's the quote. Tennis uses the language of life. Advantage, service, fault, break, love. Every match is a life in miniature. And this is a quote that was attributed to Andre Agassi, who was one of the greats. And I just thought, isn't that amazing? What I call true creative essence now, that's who we really are. Spiritual being, infinite being, consciousness, whatever word you like for who we all really are. Sometimes just does these amazing things, you know, that here's this major sport that people all over the world love to play and watch. And the language that's used for the specific things that you're doing when playing a tennis match point to this whole human experience in a deep and profound way. All right, so is that all I wanted to say to start? Yeah. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about today, to illustrate something and have you really get something in a slightly different way than me just talking about it, is what I call the magic genie effect. So we talked a little bit about magic genies last week, if you're here. It is a fantasy that I always had, that I could meet a magic genie who would be able to magically grant all of the wishes that I would ever have. It's a fantasy of a lot of people. If people don't have a fantasy specifically of a magic genie, many people, and this really gets pounded on in personal development and spiritual development, if it isn't a magic genie, then we have this hunger to have that kind of power. To be able to, in essence, snap our fingers and create absolutely anything. Have a technique that we could use that would reliably help us to create anything, change anything, become anything in our lives. If you are consciously aware of the fact that you have had a hunger for that kind of power, I call it finger snapping magic. Put a Y in the chat box or the comments just to let me know that yes, you're aware of the fact that you secretly or very visibly have had that kind of a fantasy, that kind of a wish, and that you recognize that, again, that's what gets pushed on with all these techniques that are out there for attracting, manifesting, creating what you want. That's what they push on, is this hunger that we have to have that kind of power. So what I call the magic genie effect is, let's look at what would actually happen if you had that kind of power. Now, I'm going to speak generally, but something like this is what would happen. And it would happen in slightly different ways for different people. It would take longer for certain of the things that I'm talking about to happen, but here's what would happen. If you had that kind of power that most of us on this path hunger for, I'll check in a minute to see how many Y's we got in the chat box of people that are aware of that hunger. Here's what would happen. You remember last week, if you watched it live or on a replay, we talked about the list that we all have. And for some of us, like I used to be, the list is really long of stuff, bad stuff we want to get rid of in our lives, good stuff we want to bring in or get more of. We have these lists. So if you had this kind of power, the first thing that you would do is you'd go, oh, goody. And you'd start going through your list. And you would snap your finger, and your debt would be gone. You'd snap your finger, and all of a sudden you'd be living in the house or the apartment or the neighborhood or whatever that you've always wanted to live in. You'd snap your finger, and your body would lose whatever weight or get whatever level of toned or whatever goals you've had with body health and wellness. And you'd snap, 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 going through your list. And for a while, it would be really cool, and it would be really fun. And then what would start to happen is that initial excitement would wear off. And you'd get through your list. So all this stuff that's been driving you forever, that's been taking up so much of your time, money, and energy is taken care of. And so then it would kind of be, a couple of things would happen. It would be, well, now what? I got all the stuff that I've wanted. You know, I've got all the stuff that I've been pushing so hard for, trying all these techniques, doing all these things. Now what? And the other thing would be is that you always wanted to live in this neighborhood or have a body that looked or functioned in a certain way. Or you wanted this or you wanted that. You wanted to make this much money a year. You wanted to have this much as your net worth, whatever else it is. And as I mentioned last week, you'd snap your finger and then you'd go, all right, well, so this house, this apartment in New York City, you know, whatever it is, it's really pretty cool. And again, for a while, different length of time for different people. It would be fun, you know, because you'd snap, you'd have the house. You'd snap, you'd have the furnishings. You'd snap, you'd have the car. You'd snap and have the technology. You'd snap and have all these things, you know, and that would keep you busy for a while. And then again, two things would happen. One would be, now what? And the other thing would be, after a while, again, some of it would last. There can be exceptions to all of this, but it would be, wait a minute. This isn't what I thought it was going to be like. All right, snap. Now you're not living in this house. Now you're living in this apartment, you know, in Paris or something, you know, and you'd get there. And same thing, might be cool for a while, might not. Snap, snap, snap to change certain things. And then it would be, well, no, this isn't right. Or you always wanted to be a rock star, you know, or an actor, you know, and get an Academy Award or win a gold medal in the Olympics, whatever it is, snap, and you'd have it. And again, it would be really cool for a while, and then it wouldn't be. And then all of a sudden, and the mind would have a great difficulty accepting this if you're the way that I used to be. It would ultimately get to the point where you would be, and if you don't already know me, I have a tendency to swear. That's just the way I am. So if that bothers you, I'm not even going to apologize. It's just the way it is. That's who I am. So you'd be bored off your ass if you really had this kind of power. And notice, by the way, it seems to be a universal thing in our DNA. I think I talked about this last week or the week before, that humans love stories. And we consume stories in different ways. We spend billions and billions and billions of dollars, I don't even know what the figure is anymore, going to the movies and reading stories in books and watching stories on TV, and some people participating in stories with video games. Whatever it is, there's listening to stories with friends at a bar, you know, or at a restaurant, whatever it is. And we love stories, but have you ever noticed? In the stories that we love most, the hero never says, oh, the aliens are about to invade Earth. I'm just going to snap my finger and make them go away. You never see that. And if you did, would you enjoy the movie? The answer would be no. I should have asked you that to put a comment in the chat box. If you're understanding what I'm pointing to here, please put a U for understanding in the comment or the chat box. What you see in movies, what you see in novels, what you see in TV shows, what you see in the stories that we love hearing from other people when they tell us the stories of their lives are not finger-snapping magic. They're journeys. They start at a certain point. There's a certain goal. There's a certain target. There's a certain thing or things that they want. That's where they start. Then there's a journey. And in the journey, there's all kinds of problems and ups and downs and twists and turns and oh no, I'm never going to get it, or I had it and I lost it. And there's all this stuff that happens and good things that help you get closer. And there's a journey. And then at the end of the story, it somehow resolves itself. Now, when I was a kid, there was what was called the Hollywood happy ending, which is that the movie always ended up with the hero getting exactly what it is that they wanted in this beautiful, all tied up with this nice, beautiful ribbon kind of a thing. And stories aren't like that anymore. But they're always a journey. And this is a quote from T.S. Eliot. And by the way, we're talking about Magic Genie. I forgot to show you that picture. So there's the picture I had today. Again, I showed it last week of the Magic Genie. And then here is... actually, I didn't mean to show that yet. This is the one I wanted to show now. This is taken from a poem by T.S. Eliot. And I'm sure you've heard it. It's a very common phrase in spiritual teachings that it's the journey, not the destination, that matters. But that's really the truth. It's the journey, not the destination. That's when we love stories and movies, novels, and TV. It's the journey of the character that we enjoy, not getting the destination. Now, the funny thing is, and we'll talk more about this in a future show, the mind, or what I call the mind machine, always wants the destination. Almost always. There's exceptions to everything. The mind machine isn't interested in the journey. Or if there's going to be a journey, it needs to be fast or reasonably fast and reasonably free of obstacles and struggle and difficulty. The mind almost always wants what would ultimately be a terrible story that you wouldn't enjoy. And by the way, so I'm talking about this finger snapping magic and where it would lead. That you'd be bored, you'd be empty, and you would constantly be switching around. I want this, boom, I got it. No, that's not right. I want this, boom, you have it. No, that's not right either. And you try to use your magic to tweak it and change it to make this thing that you thought that you really wanted be as good as you thought that it would be. And all of a sudden it would be snap, 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 snap. Nope, 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 nope. That's not right. I'm not happy. This isn't working. Snap, 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 snap until you would just ultimately hit this place where you would be. And the mind probably will never accept this at the idea, concept, logic level. But you'd get to a point where you would be more unhappy than the most unhappiest you've ever been, having had this kind of a power. And by the way, let me just throw something else in, which is, and you know this if you've read Busting Loose from the Money Game, or the other Busting Loose from the Business Game, or you've been through some other things that I've shared. This kind of power is what who we really are is actually like. Has that kind of power. Again, I call it true creative essence now. Can snap its finger and create entire universes and anything. Snap of a finger metaphorically, or it could be literally. That's not what the human experience was created for. Who you really are already has this. Already has this kind of an experience. Did not create the human experience to have humans be able to do this. That's not what it was about. We'll talk more about this in future episodes, and I talk a lot about it in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. Who we really are created this, the human experience, for journeys. Amazing journeys from a ton of point A's to point B's and all of the stuff that happens in between on journeys. It was all about experiences. It wasn't about this. And that's why you don't see. You don't see this. And even when you watch movies with superheroes or magic people like Harry Potter or whatever else, they may be able to control the universe to a great degree because of their superpower or their magic, but they still can't do this. They don't have that kind of omnipotence. Now I wanted to show you this picture. This is a character you may know, you may not, named Q. And it's from a TV series called Star Trek: The Next Generation. And this character named Q actually was omnipotent. He was part of an omnipotent race. And they encountered him in space. And he, in the show, you see what I just narrated to you happening. He has the ability to snap his finger and create anything, be anything, do anything, and has access to all knowledge, all information of what's going on everywhere in the universe. And ultimately, towards the end of the series, he goes to the elders in his omnipotent godlike race and asks them if he can die, because he's completely bored and there's no enjoyment left from having this kind of power, because that's where it ultimately leads. So it's about the journey. It's about, okay, there's a point A, which is where you start, and this can loop for us a lot in our lives, or there can be one goal that you spend a long, long, long time on or whatever, but there's one or more point A's, there's a point B, and then there's a journey between A and B. And in this journey, all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of feelings, all kinds of sensations with your body, all kinds of experiences with other people, all kinds of experiences with food and music and sunsets and whatever else it is. And that's what it's all about. It's this amazing journey. And that takes me to the question that I teased you with in this title. And the question is, on this path, you ultimately have to make a decision. Stuff's happening, and I pushed on this in the second, third, and fourth episodes of the show about creating your reality. You have to make a decision. Everything that happens is by design, is an intelligent plan from, again, I call it true creative essence, the infinite being, whatever that we really are. There's an intelligent plan that is behind everything that happens on our journeys, because we have many journeys, but basically our journey starts when we're born and it ends when we die. And all these things happen in between on our long journeys and then the sub-journeys with goals that we have in the bigger journey. And you ultimately have to decide, is all of it that happens on my journey in my life and the sub-journeys, is it the result of an intelligent plan, or is it whatever you want to call it, random and accidental? Because let me tell you something first. It can't be a little bit of both. It's either one or the other. And somebody can argue with me on that, and that's fine. But to me, it can't be, well, there's a little bit of a plan, and then some of the other things aren't planned. Because there's this journey, you know? There's a definite point A for all of us, and there's a definite point B, and all these things happen in between. And I'm not going to repeat what I talked about in the earlier episodes. If you haven't seen them about what really creates reality, I'd like to invite you to go back and watch them. But you have to make that decision. Is it all the result of an intelligent plan, or is it all accident, chance, random, or whatever, not the result of an intelligent plan, however you want to language it. Now, if you just think about this, arguments can be made to support both sides, and these kinds of arguments take place all the time, particularly with scientists and people that look at the world that way. And an argument can be made, there is no plan, there is no purpose, there is no point. It's all just random and accidental and the result of universal laws, physical laws, whatever happening. And a very convincing story can be made to defend that position. And a very convincing story can be made to support that it's all the result of an intelligent plan. Now, for me, on my journey, it became absolutely crystal clear intellectually and at a beyond knowing, with a capital K, feeling kind of a level, that everything down to the smallest detail is the result of an intelligent plan created by, written by, like the author of a story, who we really are. Again, my current labels, true creative essence. I used to use other labels you may be aware of: consciousness, expanded self, director, if you're way back, inner CEO, way back to my first 2 books and courses that came from them. It became clear to me that everything down to the smallest detail is the result of an intelligent plan that was written and created by who we really are. The whole journey, and this bothers some people, and a lot of stuff about free will and all these other kinds of things can come up. We can talk about that another day. Can come up when I say stuff like that, and a lot of people think it's really bad news. But my truth and what I've experienced is, it's all the result of an intelligent plan. It's a story that's been written before we experience it, just like when you go to the movies. That whole movie's been made before you get there. And you see it unfold second by second up on the screen. If it's a book, you see it unfold page by page, but it was all written, it was all in the can before you got there, you know. And my bias and my experience and my knowing is, intellectually and in a feeling, intuitive, whatever you want to call it, knowing kind of a way, is it's the same thing for us. If somebody's born and lives to be 105, if someone's born and lives to be 12, if someone's born and lives to be 87, absolutely everything that happened on their long and the journeys in between, goals that we have at different parts of our lives and the journeys to them, is all the result of an intelligent plan. Now, to me, if you look and you're brutally honest, and some people can't be, and some people have blind spots. We all have blind spots. And the people that would defend aggressively know the world is just chaos and random and accident and there isn't any purpose and there isn't any plan, won't be able to see the kind of thing that I'm about to say. But I've mentioned this before. I love reading biographies of people. I mean, I love biographies and knowing the stories of people. Doesn't matter what they do, you know, who they are, whether they got famous or successful or whatever. But most of the biographies and documentaries that you see out there are about somebody that somehow got famous, somehow made a big contribution to life, to world, to the planet, and their life stories. And to me, the mind can do anything. But if you're brutally honest and you read biographies, and when I was brutally honest, looking back at my own journey, and I talk about this in the Ultimate Freedom Experience, it is so obvious to me that there was a plan in motion, and that stuff, in my case, that happened to me when I was born, when I was 3, when I was 2, and when I was 12 and 15, all of it was the result of an intelligent plan. And somebody can say, well, Robert, you're just putting this overlay on top of that, and you're putting connections and logical whatevers to support that position. But for me, it's more than that. It's obvious. And if you read the biographies of famous, successful people, you just see this. It screams at you that it is obviously my bias. You're welcome to disagree. But when you read these biographies or you see a documentary, it is so obvious that there was an intelligence that was driving things, and that an intelligence knew when somebody was 3, that this was going to happen when they were 33, and this was going to happen when they were 43, and seeds were being planted. You can see this. You can see the unfoldment of an intelligent plan, of a pre-planned story. But ultimately, you have to make a decision, one way or the other. And again, some people might be tempted, and there are some teachings out there, including things that we call manifestation, attraction, reality creation, that say, well, there are certain things that you can't control, but there are other things that you can. Certain things are left up to us, and we can choose, and certain things are pre-planned or whatever. And to me, it's all or nothing. It's either all intelligent plan, because if there's a plan, you started here when you were born, you end up here when you die, and all of this stuff happens on your journey in your life, which again is the whole point of the human experience. Unique characters, starting at unique point A's, having unique journeys to point B's, and then their story ends, but it's all about the unique experiences that happen on the journey. So if there's a plan, and the plan is unfolding, and it isn't pre-written and isn't controlled down to the smallest detail by who we really are, you might not have the journey that was determined. You know, this is where a lot of the stuff, my bias about that you can blow your life purpose, you can make a mistake, you can get off track, comes from. But to me, the reality is who you really are wanted to have very specific experiences as part of the human experience. And so, in my language now, shaped itself into you and me and everybody else, unique characters on these unique journeys in order to have specific experiences, all of which have been scripted in advance and all of which is managed from behind the scenes, and as I mentioned before, is not coming from our thoughts, our intentions, our focus, the techniques that we use. And if we appear to use these techniques again and they work or they don't work, that was in the plan. That was in the journey, that we would do these things and they would work or not work or work for a little time. But you ultimately have to make a decision on this. Because if you choose one way, random, accidental, whatever, then that means that certain things are possible for you on your journey and certain things are not. And if you choose all the result of an intelligent plan, the purpose of the plan is for unique characters to be in unique situations and have unique experiences. That opens the door to all kinds of other things, including the experience of what I call ultimate freedom. But this is another, to me, example of something where most people, including me, when I was younger, do not dip beneath the surface to take a look at a very obvious and profound question. Is it all the result of an intelligent plan? Or is it whatever else you want to call it that's the opposite of that? Random, accidental, chance, the result of random, universal, physical laws, whatever, interacting with each other. Or if you think about it, and I guess I'll probably have to talk about this in a future show, if you want to say that all of us, if you still really believe that all of us have the ability to create our own reality, manifest what we want, attract what we want, create the realities that we want, then you could say, well, then it's the result of all of these individuals trying to enforce what they want and bend the reality to their will. And so what happens is just what happens when all these people are using all this power. But it gets kind of crazy if you think about it. And to me, it's not the truth. And ultimately, my bias, you can experience the truth of this, that it's all been written in advance. It's all created so that we as unique characters can have these unique journeys in the human experience, that who we really are, who we really are, doesn't have a body, doesn't have relationships, doesn't have businesses, doesn't have money, doesn't have ears, doesn't have eyes, can't experience any of the stuff that we experience without us, so to speak. And so, but you ultimately have to answer that question. And I'd be curious, if you think everything you think at this point, or it makes more sense, or whatever, is intelligent plan, put an IP for intelligent plan in the comments or the chat box. And if you think that it isn't, either isn't all intelligent plan, or some of it is and some of it isn't, then however you want to express that, I can't give you just 3 letters. I'd love to see where you all are now, where you were before you got here, it might be, or where you are now, because these kinds of things are now rippling out from some of the stuff that I just said. But ultimately, you have to answer that question, and it's all or nothing. And then based on how you answer that question, it opens the door to amazing possibilities. And my bias, my experience is the only answer to the question that ultimately ends up empowering you, enabling you to experience truth with a capital T, and what I call ultimate freedom, living an unblocked life, phase 3, whatever label that you want, is if you choose the answer and then ultimately experience it, even if it's just thinking to start, that it's all the result of an intelligent plan. The goal of the intelligent plan is for us to have unique journeys and unique experiences. And then many, 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 many more things ripple out from that, from the simple answering of this question. Because if you answer it on the other side, and this isn't a technique, it isn't positive thinking, if you answer it on the other side, that it's not an intelligent plan, there isn't a specific purpose, it hasn't been written in advance, the missions and purposes are not always achieved, they can be screwed up, we can get off track, whatever, you're never going to get out of pain. The struggle is never going to end. The only possibility for true transformation with capital T's, to experience truth with a capital T, this is all my bias, of course, to experience what I call ultimate freedom, is if you answer it on the intelligent plan journey side that I sketched with you here. And so I invite you to consider this, and I offer this as ripples in your pond. So that completes my share part of this show. And so what I want to do now, I've got a little video that I want to show you. And while you're watching that, I'll get everything set up to be able to answer questions and respond to your comments about what I just shared. Is the top priority to get questions or shares about what I just said about the magic genie effect and the question you must answer. But if there's time and you have questions from other shows, that's fine. I do not answer coaching questions or questions about the books or other things that I offer here. Questions, comments, shares here are only about what I've talked about here. And if you're going to ask a question, if you've been before, which I know a lot of you have to the show, you already know this, but if you're new, put a Q and then a colon before your question, because I never know how much I'm going to get. And so I have to skim the comments in the chat boxes for my website and Facebook and YouTube. And so I skim looking for Qs, meaning it's a question. And that's what I look for first. So I'll play you this video. I'll get ready. You can start typing in some questions or comments or shares or whatever about what I talked about if you want right now. And then I'll come back on after this video. But again, type a Q before the question. Usually the goal is to go about 30 minutes to just about 12 noon my time or a little bit after for Q&A, and then it ends. I don't stay on for 2 hours. If there's a zillion questions, I pick the ones that I think are the most universal, and I address them for 30 minutes, and then give or take, and then the show ends. So here's the video, and where is my video? Oh yeah, here it is. And then I'll be back for Q&A. Most of us, including me when I was younger, begin the journey into truth with a capital T with something like this going on. Now imagine that the house that you're looking at is the metaphor for your life, everything that's going on in your life. And underneath that house, underneath everything that's happening in your life and has been happening for a long time, imagine that there's a weak, wobbly, cracked foundation like what you're looking at. And you can see that when the foundation is like that, it affects everything about the house that's built on top of it. And so the opportunity then is to knock out that weak, wobbly, cracked foundation, to actually remove it, replace it with a brand new foundation that is rock solid and built on truth with a capital T. And then once there is a new foundation in place, you can then start to build new things on top of it and have radically different experiences in your life on top of it once that new, rock solid, based on truth foundation is in place. The ultimate freedom experience that I offer, live and online, is designed to do just that for you, with me acting as your guide, as your coach. It is specifically designed to knock out the weak, wobbly foundation, to replace it with a new foundation built rock solid and based on truth with a capital T, and then support you in starting to experience a radically new life being built on top of that. And by the way, when I speak about weak, wobbly, cracked foundation, I am not talking about what you usually hear about, which is things in your subconscious mind, limiting beliefs, disempowering beliefs, energy things, karmic things, or whatever else. What I discovered is at the core of the weak, wobbly, cracked foundation is something radically different. If you'd like to find out more about the ultimate freedom experience that I offer, just visit my website at robertscheinfeld.com. All right, so we are officially, I need to have a glass of water here. We are officially in the question and answer session. So again, if you have questions or comments, put a Q for a question, put a C for a comment, and I'll take a look at the various sources and we'll go through them. Before we do that, I want to make a couple of quick points. One, anytime that the mind gets involved and thinking and logic and ideas and concepts are involved, there is the likelihood of what I would call distortion. There is the likelihood of resistance, arguing, disagreement, particularly on first blush. And so the kinds of things that I shared here today and the kinds of things I've shared in previous shows and will in the future, whatever happens when you first hear it happens, and whatever happens at the idea, concept, thinking level happens. Ultimately, nothing means anything until it drops down to an absolute and to an actual experience. And then the mind shuts up, and you have an absolute knowing of what's true. Anytime, again, the mind gets involved, there can be a lot of, I call it mind noise. Or sometimes I get a little bit more, I'll say mental bullshit or whatever else it is, no disrespect intended. So I would be surprised if there was not resistance to the kinds of stuff that I am sharing and that I have shared today. And the opportunity is drops in the pond. that can ripple out. We'll see where they go over time. But just thinking about it and just looking at what your mind says about it now, at first blush, doesn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything for me until it ultimately dropped down to experience. And there's many, many other pieces to the puzzle here. So let's see what we got. Excuse me. Tony says, I've always said that Utopia would never work because we would lose the ability to care about anything. Well, again, something like what I talked about would happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody would lose the ability to care about everything, but it certainly would be less enjoyable with this and this kind of power. And it would ultimately become boring and empty. It would take different amounts of time for different people. But again, if you look at the movies that we watch, if you look at the TV shows that we watch and that we love, the movies we love, the novels that we read that we love, they're never about utopia. They're always about, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, they're always about a hero that wants something, goes after it, and experiences to one degree or another huge obstacles and resistance, and oh my God, I'm never going to get it. All is lost moments, they're called. And there's this journey that they take. And as we follow them on this journey, we have thoughts and feelings and sensations, and we have these experiences, and that's why we love the stories. And a story about utopia where everybody's happy and everybody's prosperous and everybody gets everything they want and or is not an interesting story, which is why, to my bias, you don't see it happening on the planet. Could someday, but excuse me, it's not a great story. It's not interesting. Other things are what make the opportunity for stories to be interesting. I got this thing in my voice here. So, okay. Maura Rose says, has to be the result of an intelligent plan. I saw a lot of IPs. I saw some, I don't have any ideas, whatever. Let's see here. Okay, Frank says, one day I woke up and experienced the feeling as if to be omnipotent. It was given to me just like that out of nowhere. Feeling that for that small moment, I thought to myself, so what? If I was omnipotent, there would be no point in changing anything because I could also wait and change it later if I liked to do so. I learned from this that there is no point in changing anything that is just the way it is right now. Be it also very embarrassing. Means it always is the right way even if we don't like it. Yes, absolutely. But again, the key is this. The mind almost always focuses on the destination and it complains about the journey. I'm making generalizations here. But that's, in general, the way that the mind works for most people most of the time. You might be an exception, somebody watching this right now live or on video. But the point of it all is the unique experiences that are possible. When you go after something and don't get it, have to change your plan. You go after it and this happens and that happens, and these journeys, big journey of our whole life, many journeys of goals that we seek after. It's the unique experiences in the journey that's what it's all about. And sometimes we get the destination, sometimes we don't get there. Sometimes we get there, as I mentioned, and it isn't as cool as we thought it would be, and we got to go to plan B, whatever. But it's all about the journey and the precious, extraordinary experiences that we have as we're doing whatever, and whatever happens on these journeys. That's what matters. And the intent of it is, even though we don't think it, and Frank, you pointed to this, because again, the mind wants the destinations that are our goals and almost always complains about everything that's going on in the journey to it. It's taking too long, it's too hard, people aren't treating me well. I'm suffering with this, I'm suffering with that. I want all that gone, I want to get my destination, I want to get my goal. So again, the mind almost always wants the opposite of what this human experience is really about. But the precious, cherished, amazing part of this journey is all the unique experiences we have on the big journey and then the little journeys in between. And who we really are doesn't judge all the other stuff, isn't in a big hurry to get to the destination, wants the journey and all the experiences. That's what's most important. And you can't think your way into looking at life this way. We'll talk about this in a future episode. You can't technique your way into, I'm not saying to you, next time you go through a hard time in your life, just tell yourself, you're a character in a story and there's an author and there's a purpose to it and there's a plan and it's all about the experiences as a technique to try to feel better or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. As I've mentioned in all of the episodes, there's a shift that can take place inside of you. That's what I call the ultimate freedom experience. It creates that shift. And then all of these things start to be experienced differently, not thought about differently, but experienced differently. And then that ripples out and changes everything else. But these are pieces of the puzzle that I'm sharing with you. All right. Tony says, so whatever decision we make is already predetermined, then what is the point? Well, I'll answer this in two ways for you. And again, this is no disrespect intended. This is your mind thinking about what I said. And as I mentioned, the mind is almost always, and this was true of me, it's true of most people. When the mind gets involved, it almost always distorts whatever it's focusing on. So it makes perfect sense that you'd ask the question, and it would seem to be a problem. But so much of it, again, no disrespect intended, is mind noise. So the point is the experiences. That's why these things happen. Because there's the journey, it's predetermined, it's planned, but as the journey's unfolding, there are all these unique experiences. Now, I'll give you another example that's metaphorical, but it's also accurate. I love using the example of the Harry Potter stories. So there's 7 books, 8 movies. Everything that happens in those books is predetermined. J.K. Rowling, the author, wrote the whole book before you could have it and read it. The screenplay for the movies has already been done. It's predetermined before you can watch it in a theater or at home. It's all predetermined, all written. So if you say, well, so what's the point? The point is, as you're reading the books, as you're watching the movies, you're having experiences. And for a movie, it's, about 2 hours. For a novel, some of those Harry Potter books and other novels are long, so it can be many, many more hours that you're having. But that's the point, and that's the only point. The experiences that you have on the journeys that we take, whether we get to the destination or not. Tony says the paradox is unsolvable. This doesn't make sense to me. I understand. It wouldn't have made sense to me purely if somebody had just dumped it on me like I've dumped it on you. It's a piece, it's puzzle pieces of a much bigger picture that has to come into clarity, and then an experience has to happen that creates this shift. This is just a piece. I got 30 minutes once a week to share some stuff here. When I do the Ultimate Freedom Experience, for example, live, it's 5 days. It's 5 days of shifts and things happening that are designed drops in the pond to ripple out and create these shifts. And it's uniquely designed, and people aren't, it's not just 30 minutes and then they're back to their life. So there's only so much that can be done here. Makes perfect sense that it doesn't make sense. I'm planting seeds. I'm dropping drops in ponds that can ripple out for some of the people that are paying attention to this show and not, but that makes perfect sense. If everything is predetermined, then we have no agency. We are just puppets. This is a common kind of, and would make many suicidal. What would be the point of any of this? Again, no disrespect intended, Chris. That's mind noise. It isn't the truth. And the mind is going to argue the hell out of this. For most people, particularly if they have certain things in what I call the mind machine about free will and I choose and I create and all this kind of stuff. I totally understand it. But then it gets into, you say, we have no agency, which means Robert doesn't have any agency and Chris doesn't have any agency. Like Harry Potter and the Harry Potter stories, I'm using your word, doesn't have any agency. It's all J.K. Rowling. The mind thinks that that's a problem, but it's not. And is Harry somehow, you could say that Harry Potter is a puppet. and that he doesn't have any power, and you could say that there's therefore something bad about that. But to me, it just isn't true. And it also gets to the question that I've hinted at, but we haven't talked about it in detail, of who are you really? Because if all you really are is this, and this has been created and is then put here and is then moved around, like a puppet, then some of what you say could be accurate. But to me, that's not the truth of what's going on. And I can't really go any deeper into that. I'll give you just another seed plant here. All of this is addressed in the Ultimate Freedom Experience in a way that you can actually experience, not just let the mind debate on or spin or come up with its opinions about. But if you look at, again, something like the Harry Potter stories, there's an author, and then there's thousands of characters in those stories, of which Harry Potter is the hero. Now, Harry Potter in the books seems like an individual. He seems like he has free will. He seems like he has choice. He seems like he has agency. But he doesn't. Everything he says, does, thinks, feels, and experiences on the pages of the book were written in advance by J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, the author, is Harry Potter. Harry Potter is J.K. Rowling. You cannot separate them. They are one and the same. So there's no puppet and puppeteer. There's just this amazing experience unfolding. And I realize that the mind can have difficulty with that and can argue with that too. But that's the best little brief soundbite that I can give you as a drop in the pond right now in response to that. And you have to understand too, I hear this kind of stuff all the time. And I had the same kind of stuff myself. It's common that what I call the mind machine will spit this kind of stuff out when it hears this kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean anything. There is still the possibility to move through the noise, to ultimately have an experience of truth. And that's what my role is, and that's what I help other people to do, is to take that journey and to actually experience the truth, drops in the pond that ripple out and change the way that you experience everything. And in little tidbits here, sound bites, giving you little puzzle pieces, I'm sharing pieces of that puzzle with you here. All right, I'm going to do one more here, and then I'm going to go move to the other things. David says, if unlimitedness wants to feel limitedness, why wouldn't it make stuff off of the story rolls along rather than knowing everything that happens before it happens? What would be the fun of that? Okay, again, no disrespect. That's a great logical argument that makes perfect sense to the mind, and it just isn't true. There's logical stuff, metaphorical stuff that I can give you. We don't have time for that right now. Perhaps I'll put it on the list to do on a future show. But this is a story that the mind is making up. But I can give you logic, intellect, ideas, and concepts to support why the conclusion your mind has come up with, that wouldn't be any fun. And it would be better if it was all done on the fly. But the biggest argument for it is when what I call ultimate freedom awakens, and you have the experience, which is what it's all about, of who you really are, what I call true creative essence now, experiencing everything in your life, what's there is delight and enjoyment of all of it. That's just what's there. That's the experience. It's not a thinking. It's not an affirmation. It's an experience, wow, about absolutely everything, and enjoyment about everything, and that's the biggest argument. But beyond that, we don't have time for it right now. But what I can tell you, no disrespect intended, is the argument that you made, well, it would seem that if this was that, then it wouldn't be very fun. It would be this. It would be better if... that's just the mind making noise. And to my bias, it's not the truth, and it isn't what the experience of truth is really like. It's just the mind spinning a story. And there's so many stories like that, and I heard them in my own mind on my journey, and I hear them from other people all the time, and ultimately they drop away when the experience that I call the ultimate freedom experience awakens, ripples through, and changes the way everything is being perceived and experienced. All right, let's see what we got here. If there's a pre-plan, then how would there be space for novelty, for invention, or creation? Or is it there and we have to tune in? Again, no disrespect intended. That's just mind noise again. And I can give you metaphor after metaphor and story after story, but the best example is movies and novels. When we're reading stories and novels, when we're watching movies, when we're watching TV shows, it's all predetermined. It's all been written in advance. There's a writer of it. But there is still novelty. There is still invention. There is still creation. There is still all the good stuff that can be experienced. So again, the mind distorts this kind of stuff by just thinking about it. And that's the big challenge. It has to drop down to an experience of the truth. And that's when there's impact on your story. The mind can argue about anything. Human beings, people sitting at a party, sitting in a class in college, whatever. We could argue about anything. And pretty much any point can be defended. A story's coming to mind now that was very impactful on me when I was a kid. I was in school in the United States, and there was this thin little book that was assigned to us in history class. And it was 10 possible interpretations of the cause of the American Revolution. It was a long mouthful of a title. And as the title would suggest, there were 10 chapters in this book, and each chapter said, this is the true cause of the American Revolution. And each chapter was completely different and defended its position equally well. And I read the first chapter and I went, wow, that's interesting. That's why the American Revolution happened. Then I went to chapter 2, completely different thing, very convincing. And I thought, wow, that makes sense too. And then all 10 times, you know. And a lesson went into my mind. The mind can argue with, support, defend, lay evidence for anything. And there's a big part of why this works, that it is designed this way. That true creative essence creates these kinds of things on journeys because it's what contributes to the journey. So the mind can defend all this stuff at the pure idea and concept level, but when you actually have the experience of truth, that's not what's there. There isn't a problem. There isn't a loss of something wonderful, valuable, precious. In fact, it couldn't be more opposite. There's the awakening of more amazingness and preciousness and whatever else you want to call it, not the kinds of things that the mind will spit out when it first hears some of these ideas. Lisa, are you talking about experiencing the quote-unquote higher self and its intrinsic connection to everything that is with regard to the plan that has already been written? Not really. And again, I mean no disrespect. That question, to my bias, and I could be wrong, is filled with things that you've learned in spiritual teachings or whatever. So it's kind of like that, but not really. And one of the things that I learned a long time ago, and we'll talk about this in a future show, you can't think your way into truth with a capital T. The mind was not designed to understand truth. It was designed to process lies, illusions, and stories in a flawed way. My bias. And so you can't understand these kinds of things. You have to be able to experience them. And so to say, is it this, and this, I would use different language. I would construct a sentence differently to try to describe what you're pointing at in words. But ultimately, it doesn't make any difference. And the words don't make any difference. And when it drops down to an actual experience of being who you really are and getting what everything is really all about, what's going on, there's no more questions. And the mind doesn't spit out its noise anymore. It's like you probably all of you have seen something like this. There's a scene in a movie called City of Angels, and there's a scene where an angel who's not physical sees a human eating a pear and says, "What does that pear taste like? Describe it to me." And she says, well, it's sugary and it's kind of this and it's kind of that. And she could do her best to describe it, but the bottom line is until that angel bites into a pear and actually tastes it, isn't going to know what a pear tastes like. And the minute you bite into a pear and you know what it tastes like, the mind doesn't try to figure it out anymore. It doesn't try to pull in language from something that it's learned and put that on top. Is it this or that, higher self, and all this stuff. You just get the experience, and then the mind shuts up because it doesn't need to speculate about what it is in advance, try to understand it in advance of having the experience. It now knows the experience, so to speak, and so it doesn't have to, hopefully you understand that. That's to me the only power. That's the only gift on this path, is when these things drop down to actual experience. The thinking can go on forever and not make any difference at all. But when it drops down to experience, which is what I hungered for my whole life and what finally happened, and what I help to happen with other people now too, other characters in their stories, that's where the power is. There's a famous saying, knowledge is power. In some things it is, but on the journey into truth and ultimate freedom, my language, it's not. It's an okay first step. It can be helpful. But ultimately, it's worthless if it doesn't drop down to an actual experience. And again, when it drops down to an experience, the mind shuts up and the speculation goes away and the what about this, and it seems like it wouldn't be very fun, and I'm gone, because you have the experience, and the experience is wow, just to use one word. Okay. Okay, Melissa says, I do believe in intelligent plan because it's just so obvious, especially if you're open. I absolutely agree. If you look with clear vision, it's obvious. My bias, like everything else, but it's obvious there's a plan at work. When I look back again on my life and you look at the lives of other people, and the easiest way to do that is in documentaries and biographies. It screams off the page that there was an intelligent plan unfolding. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, and that whoever created the plan has the ability to control and manage everything to make sure that the plan gets fulfilled, the goals, the big goals get achieved, and that these amazing experiences that were the point of all of it actually happen. Okay. However, I also believe our actions do have relevance. Well, if you and I were talking, I'd have to say, well, what does relevance mean? And then based on how you define that, we could talk about it. But ultimately, again, you either create your own reality and can affect it, or you can't. My bias is it isn't sometimes and not other times. It either is or it isn't. My bias, everyone watching this is welcome to disagree. There's either a plan or there's not. I'm either in charge or I'm not. You have to answer these kinds of questions. And the way that I answered them, first understanding it and then it dropping down to experience, is the stuff that I'm starting to share with you here. So I'd need to know more about what you mean by our actions have relevance. Harry Potter's actions in the stories have relevance, but he's still not determining what's happening. J.K. Rowling is. So it depends on how you define some of these terms. But that's a great metaphor, author and fictional character in a story, to be able to answer some of these kinds of questions. Alex says, they're not our quote-unquote actions. We just get to sit back and chill, even if that's climbing Mount Everest. Well, I would use different language, but something like that is the truth of what happens in your day-to-day life. I wouldn't say you sit back and chill, because it's still a very total immersion kind of an experience. But something like that is part of what happens when the experience that I call ultimate freedom awakens. In terms of you have an absolute experience of who you really are, what's really going on, what the point of all of it is, what the real gift of everything really is. And there's, again, words don't serve. There's a relaxation into that in a similar way to what happens when you're watching a great story in a movie, reading it in a novel, or on a TV show. It's a similar kind of a thing, but different in some significant ways. Adriana says, great analogies or examples. Read the book and the pair. All right, let's see here. I want to make sure I take a look at all of these potential sources for comments or questions. Helly says, when the truth hits you, your biggest problem is that you cannot share this experience. Again, the way I'm built, the way my mind works, however you want to language it, I take everything literally. And so my experience is that was not my biggest problem. That kind of a thing takes care of itself. And this is not a rule or a formula or a prescription or a recommendation, but for me, I play the role of speaker, teacher, coach, writer, whatever you want to call it. I share these things. I help people to have the experience of ultimate freedom awake, is my language. But in my private life, I never talk about any of this. I never talk about any of this unless somebody invites me in. And it's not a problem for me, and I don't try to change the world, and I don't try to convince anybody of anything. I don't try to argue with anybody about anything. I shine my own unique light. I share my own bias. I help the people that want what it is that I can help them with. I set things into motion. I know that I can't control any of it. Where it goes, it goes. But that's not my biggest problem. You know, it's not the biggest problem of people that I know that have taken this journey and ultimate freedom has awakened. Again, I think a lot of that is the mind thinking, oh boy, that would really be a big problem. And I address that towards the end of the ultimate freedom experience, this feeling that we can have that we're an alien, stranger in a strange land. I'm in this place, everybody else is somewhere else. How am I supposed to make that work? You know, how am I supposed to deal with my friends and my family? These kinds of things the mind comes up with, but it takes care of itself. It's not really a big problem. Cindy says, I never watch TV, movies, or read fiction. After having a lot of painful experiences, I know I enjoy smooth sailing much better. What about quantum physics and how our consciousness really does create reality? Well, again, Cindy, no disrespect, but the question that you just asked, if I were to answer it accurately and completely in the way that my mind would like to, it would take me hours. I mean, huge, huge, huge things being pushed on there. I'm just going to take one little piece because I had the same experience. When I was going through a lot of the things that I went through on the journey to ultimate freedom awakening, again, that's my language, that used to appear in my mind a lot. My life has been so difficult. There's been so much struggle. There's been so much pain. You know, talking to True Creative Essence, you know, I'd really just love some smooth sailing for a while. I would really like things to be easy. I'd like to, you know, Murphy's Law is what can go wrong will go wrong, then I'd like to have the opposite of that, whatever law, where everything that can go right could go right, and it's easy and smooth and whatever. But, and it's very seductive, you know, and it seems like, yes, that would be better. But the truth is, it's not in the experience of it. Now, the mind probably will never agree with that. But at the experience level, smooth sailing gets really boring really fast. It's kind of like this, but a different thing. When there's been so much pain, like you said, and so much struggle, then it seems really great and it seems really attractive. And oh my God, if I could just have smooth sailing, my life would finally be okay. And it would appear to be, odds are, for a little bit of time, and then ultimately something else would happen. Talked about it last week, talked about it a little bit this week. And so, again, in movies, and I get you don't watch them, but in movies, in TV shows, and novels, and in human life, there's almost never smooth sailing for long periods of time, because smooth sailing doesn't generate the kinds of amazing experiences that our journeys are really about, and that in my language, True Creative Essence created this whole experience to be able to have. It's just a mind thing. There's smooth sailing and there's rough seas. And smooth sailing's better than rough seas. It's just an idea. But to me, it's a lie, an illusion, and a story. And on this journey, there can be, when ultimate freedom is awake, there can be a lot more smooth sailing, what you call that. We'd have to talk about how you define it. There can be a lot more of that, but the most important piece is it doesn't matter. Just like when we're watching movies, we're reading stories, we're watching stories on TV, we can watch anything. A hurricane destroying a city, an earthquake destroying a city, a tidal wave destroying a village, New York being destroyed by an alien spaceship. We can experience anything in these stories, have unique experiences, and it's okay. There's so many possibilities here when the experience awakens, and there's so much mind noise about so many things that on my journey, ultimately, the lies, illusions, and stories that I used to think were true, that the mind really thrives on, gave way to this experience of truth and what I call ultimate freedom. And until that happens, the mind can go crazy and spit out all this kind of stuff that just isn't true, and again, that goes away when you actually have the experience of truth. As to the rest of your questions, some of it I can't answer because it's not my area of expertise, like quantum physics and stuff, and some of it I could, but it would take too long, so that's a topic potentially for another day. But to me, it all still fits into this. Even what quantum physics is saying about creating our reality, there's still an author. The author's still creating the story in which these things that quantum physics talks about appear to happen, but ultimately what I've said, my bias and experience is still the truth. And by the way, this is another saying from City of Angels. Let me see, where do I have that here? Oh yeah. Some things are true, whether you believe in them or not. That was spoken by Nicolas Cage, the actor playing this angel in City of Angels, and this is another thing that's just really true. Some things are true whether the mind agrees with them or not. Some things are just true regardless of what the mind says about them. The truth is the truth. All right, we're way over here. Let me just see if there's any other quick something that I want to address before we close. All right, Ralph says, if everything I experience in my whole life is a result of an intelligent plan, how can the consciousness about this fact lead to ultimate freedom? If I can't change anything, it sounds for me more as an ultimate prison. Okay, the key is, look at your language. It sounds to me as if. What that means is, in my language, my mind machine, whatever you want to call it, brain, whatever, listen to what you said, Robert, and the output of the machine, the logic, the idea, the concept, the thinking is that would be an ultimate prison. It's just mind noise. I can tell you from my own personal experience, and now echoed and mirrored by the experience of other people all over the world that have had this experience that I call ultimate freedom, that's not what it's like. And it does lead to this amazing, let's just call it, I wouldn't use this language, but positive experience. It isn't an ultimate prison. It couldn't be more opposite in the actual experience of it. But again, the mind can go to town on whatever, and in the ultimate freedom experience, I break down how all of that works and why the mind does what it does, and all this kind of stuff is all part of this. But the actual experience of it could not be more opposite to what you're saying or a bunch of other people are speculating that it would be like. That just isn't the truth of what the actual experience is. So we got some more things. I'll copy some of these to address another day. Again, remember, I have a very short period of time with you here. My goal is to share the brutally honest truth through my biased eyes, which I make no, I'm totally open about that. And designed to be ripples, drops in the pond for you that can ripple out and have impact over time. Obviously, it can't be completed. The shift can't take place from just me spending a couple of minutes with you like this. Of course, there's going to be doubt and resistance and mind noise and whatever else. This is pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Confrontational, against the grain, not what you usually hear kind of stuff. So again, obviously there's going to be resistance, and this stuff's going to spew out. Again, I see it all the time. I experienced it myself, and this is still the truth. Some things are true whether you believe in them or not. Some things are true whether your mind can understand it or agree with it or not. And my commitment on my journey was, I want to experience the truth with a capital T. I don't want to understand it, be able to get an A on a test. I want to experience it. And I want to experience it all day long, every day, no matter what's happening, while I'm in normal waking consciousness, not under the influence of a drug or some sort of a substance or an altered state of consciousness, but in day-to-day life. This I wasn't clear on most of my journey, and then I became very clear on it, that that was my mission. To experience as much of the truth, with a capital T, as possible in ordinary, waking, fully functional consciousness. You can drive, you can talk to people, you can do things, fully functional, waking consciousness, but experience as much of the truth as possible. That's what I wanted. And the people who want that, I can help with that because of my unique journey. There's a lot of people that don't want that. It's not part of their story. It's not part of their mission. But that's what I wanted. And the vast majority, if not all, of the people who find their way to me on some level, whether they're conscious of it or not, that's what they want too. And that's what I can help them to do. So I have some closing remarks for you. Again, if you missed some or all of this, this will repeat again. Here's the place to go on my website for replays, to subscribe to the email list to get updates and such. I have a closing video for you, and then I will look forward to, if you feel so moved, to seeing you join me on another show, or whatever our next form of contact is. I will look forward to it. So here's the closing. Thanks for joining me today. This was a blast again. It doesn't surprise me. The kind of stuff that in my language mind machines were kicking out in response to this, or that might appear in my language and inner space the rest of today, tomorrow, for quite a while. Again, my goal is to stir things up inside of you that can ripple out and create openings and expansions and experiences of truth and such, ultimately. But rarely is it going to happen this fast from this short of a thing, with me just dumping a few drops in your pond like this. But it can all accumulate. So thank you for joining me. This has been a blast. I'd love to see some more comments from you all before you disappear about how this is rippling through your awareness, your thoughts, whatever right now. And if you're watching this on a replay on video, I'd love it if you'd share that with me. Here's the closing remarks, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon in some other way, shape, or form. Bye-bye for now. For more information on how I can help you unblock yourself and experience ultimate freedom, visit my website, robertscheinfeld.com, and while you're there, get the guide. The guide will open a gateway into a free video masterclass that gives you all the details.